The president is here with the rest of the Botswana delegation ahead of the expected launch of BOSTAT-1, which of course is Botswana's very first satellite. But I also have you know that it was initially expected to be launched on the 5th, but given the unpredictabilities of just sending anything via rocket to space, that schedule has become very fluid. So we're looking at a few days from now, possibly Saturday, Sabone, but that also we will get confirmation possibly latest on Friday as to when exactly the launch will be established. It has been, obviously there are certain issues that they look at, whether it's weather conditions or, whether it's security issues around that before the launch can happen. So hence the fluidity of it. So we will have a sense of when exactly it will be launched, possibly on Friday. And of course, we will communicate that. And of course, as you rightfully mentioned, this is also very a historic moment for the country. Not many African countries have launched any satellites in space. So having the president here together with the rest of the Botswana delegation to launch Botswana's first satellite is historic indeed. And of course, brings a lot of expectations in terms of what Botswana can expect in terms of tapping into this, space technology, and of course what it will mean for various sectors of development. Someone.
So now, what, out of curiosity, and obviously wanting to understand, what is actually going to happen? So they're going to get the rocket off the ground. It's going to go up there, obviously release hatches and so on. I want to know what's going to happen in Palape on that day. I think that's my key interest. The flying and everything, we've seen that in the movies. But I want to see the uplink and the connection that happens in Palape. Have they told you what's going to happen in Palape?
Right, so we do have a sense of what exactly is going to happen, but the key issue is, I did mention the security measures in place, so we may not be able to capture everything live as it will happen. We will probably get the opportunity to capture the president as he moves towards where the launch will be expected to happen, but following that, we will probably just get pictures much later. We won't have them live, but what will be happening in BOSTAT? What happens? In our conversation that we had with Professor Totolo, when really expanding on what we can expect to happen is, following the launch of the satellite in space, it will take a bit of time, before the satellite postures itself well, given the altitude that it will obviously be positioned at. Following that, it will be expected to orbit, obviously at a certain angle given the altitude. It will be orbiting roughly around 6 times a day. But what will happen in BOSTAT at the base station, we could expect to be getting the data and information that will, obviously be retrieved from the base station weeks later following the launch. So it won't be instant. We understand that, for a satellite of this nature, it takes a bit of time for it to, well position itself, before the monitoring and capturing of data can expect to happen. So it will be weeks later, someone following this launch, that BOSTAT will be able to capture this data, manipulate it, and obviously be able to share it with the public. We did hear from the professor himself that obviously the media will be invited weeks following this launch, and we will be able to get a better appreciation of how the data will be captured, how everything will translate to the expected results that the university and Botswana would want to get from this satellite. Someone.
I think my interest is the technical part, and I think we obviously this side will also try to follow up with BOSTAT. Are we saying that this thing is controlled by SpaceX for some time, or are we saying that as soon as how when you take a camera and you put it there and you plug it, like now you and I connected straight, can we get what's going? I want to know what's going to happen as soon as it hits the sky. We are obviously paying a flight to get to space, but do we see it? Do we see its movement in Botswana. I think that's what we want to establish. However, in moving from that, has the president had any remarks so far as this launch expectation is concerned?
Right, Sabone. In terms of the technicalities of it, I do believe that the more technical and scientific minds will be able to explain that further. But in a conversation that we had with the professor and, of course, the masterminds behind this satellite, they did mention that right at this moment, in BOSTAT is able to, monitor and see where various other satellites across the world are positioned. So, I believe in that very sense. It is expected that Botswana will be able to see her own satellite once it hits space. And of course, following that, we'll be able to get the information. And maybe just answering your other question on, having President Advocate Duma Boko in Los Angeles for this launch. It is very telling, Sabona, of the magnitude of it. We obviously haven't had at this very moment a one-on-one with him, but there was a quick briefing that we had with the Botswana delegation that we managed to sit in with, and of course he expressed his sentiments regarding the magnitude of this launch, and of course he is here for it. His presence here is very telling of just the level of prioritization that government has for this satellite, and of course the ambitions that the new administration has in terms of catapulting the country to its knowledge-based economy through various avenues such as tapping into space technologies as a means to driving her knowledge-based economy quests. Sabon.
So the president obviously is there with a delegation that includes the Minister for Higher Education as well as the Minister for Communication, especially, and Innovation. We're in a space where obviously a lot of the things that we cry about here in Botswana could it do with development, growth, economic development in the space and IT sector. Will there be any conversations of that might be taking place between the Botswana delegation and people within the creative space or science space or economic space and so on?
Right. So right here in Los Angeles today, as we speak, this morning, the president and his delegation will be going to SpaceX rocket location. They will be able to tour the rocket, and obviously, you mentioned having the presence of the respective ministers of communication and innovation, as well as the minister of education as well. They'll also be there present. And obviously we've had side conversations with them as well in terms of, the level of expectation and what this really will translate to also, back home. We're looking at Sabone, what they mentioned is, the level of plow in that, government has put in, whether it's financial, whether it's the level of expertise that, came into creating this satellite itself. Botswana is moving in the direction through entities or institutions such as BOSTAT, the University of Botswana, Okavango Research Institution, and so many other institutions, bringing about the level of growth that this space industry requires. In a conversation that we had with the professor, like I mentioned, from BOSTAT, he also mentioned the fact that, as well as the minister also, the Minister of Innovation and Communication, they both mentioned, different settings, the fact that Botswana, this now means that Botswana needs to establish, various legal framework that will bring about certain levels of regulation in terms of space technologies, and how this will, translate to, growing the sectors, having young people also coming on board to tap into the available opportunities that will come as a result of these new technologies. I do believe at this point, following this launch, Sabone, one might, have hope that any young Botswana, could be a 5-year-old in Botswana who might now be, able to now dream of being an astronaut, being able to dream about going to space. I believe that, following this launch, these expectations won't be too far off. So I do believe it opens up so many opportunities on so many levels in terms of what Botswana can expect, what Botswana can expect across various sectors of development. Someone.
All right, Otshidile, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for obviously giving us a light. We look forward to hearing more and knowing more about what is happening within that space. So that is how our conversation with Otshidile Onkabetse ends at this point in time.
Physical violence is the most prevalent form of violation suffered by children in Botswana, with 28.4 female and 43.0 male children having suffered physical violation before the age of 8.